It's hard to imagine that such a peaceful rural scene could soon be transformed into a battleground, but such was the case in 1939, when Hitler's army threatened invasion. East Lothian was immediately under attack when farm workers at East Linton were strafed by a Junkers 88 on 16th of October 1939. East Lothian was strategically important. Rosyth, just up the Forth, sheltered the British fleet. If Hitler could destroy it, his chances of a successful invasion were greatly improved. So holding him at bay was crucial to the survival of the whole country, especially following the Dunkirk debacle. 2 6-inch gun batteries, such as this one opposite Fidra, and this one disguised as a cottage, were installed, with corresponding guns on the Fife coast. Concrete blocks to impede attack from the sea were laid in their thousands in various shapes around the East Lothian coastline, like these at Longnidrey, Heatherwick, Thornton Loch, and Tinningham, with tree trunks such as these embedded in the sands to hinder the landing of the gliders. Invasion posters were quickly on view in coastal areas, and invasion committees established. In May 1940, Anthony Eden, the Secretary of State for War, had called for men to serve as local defence volunteers throughout Britain. It was hoped that a force of some 150,000 might eventually be raised. Within 24 hours, 250,000 had enrolled. By the end of 1942, recruitment reached 1,850,757. Farm workers in East Lothian, as far as the Lammer Moors, were immediately involved. Training commenced right away. The Ritchie sisters, Mary and Greta, take up the story.
Were the locals involved in any way? Was there, I believe there was a kind of home guard unit here. Greta, maybe you could tell us about that.
Yes, well, the men were in reserved occupations, so there were people who were working on the farms or retired gamekeeper or whatever, but not a formal unit.
How many men would have been in it?
Oh, maybe 6 or 7 at the most. I can't really remember. You never saw them drilling or anything, it was just they were there as lookout or whatever if they were needed.
There was a kind of scare, wasn't there, with the sort of possibilities of an invasion. What went on at that time when people were sort of very much on the alert?
Greta mind you that better than me. They had to go to the top of Priestly Hill and watch for the invasion, and if they saw something happening, I think they went in twos for a whole day. Whoever was up there had to fire the gun, and the one telephone in the glen was to be used to telephone headquarters and see what was happening, but it never came to anything.
Well, I believe there was one occasion when the fellows doing that were actually tempted to take a pot shot at something. What was that?
Aye, there were a cock grouse landed on the dyke beside them, and the old man with the gun was aiming at it and saying to my father, "What a grand shot that would be, John." But they daren't shoot it in case they started another war.
Was there a lot of actual live ammunition fired around here?
I think there was. I mean, there are shell holes further up in the peat and so on. I presume there are still live shells in the peat. There's bound, unless they were using dummy. I don't know. I do know that they were doing a bit of firing.
military strategy for the defence of Great Britain decreed that the stop line, beyond which the Germans must not be allowed to advance, ended at Musselburgh. Everything to the east of this line, therefore, was to be defended vigorously, originally by the army, and then, when they were assigned to other areas of conflict, by the Home Guard. Elphinstone Tower served as a lookout point and as storage for arms and ammunition. And East Linton Home Guard used the water tower at Beanston Farm as an ammunition store. At Whittingham, a gun emplacement was installed behind this wall. Evidence still remains today. Each town, village, and even business organisation had its own platoon or section of Home Guard, as men left behind in reserved occupations flocked to join up and play their part. Here are the Longnidry Home Guard on parade on the tennis courts, Bruntons of Musselburgh on the march, and Ormiston Home Guard, many of whom were miners, at a march past. Here are squads at Stenton, Dunbar, and West Barnes, ready with anti-tank and machine guns. Some were equipped with World War I Lewis guns, but unfortunately the ammunition didn't fit. At Fenton Barnes there was instruction in how to throw hand grenades by the farmer, Rupert Chalmers Watson. New weapons were invented, like this Northover thrower, which hurled a bottle bomb, an early version of the Molotov cocktail, seen here being demonstrated at North Berwick, much to the amusement of the two young girls. Haddington Home Guard had the task of defending the satellite landing ground at Lennoxlove, and they also set up a defensive position in the High Street, in premises now known as the Pantry, to provide enfilading fire. The post office had their own section of Home Guard, who were primarily concerned with signalling and communications. Firing ranges were provided for both Home Guard and regular forces at the foot of the Garalton Hills on the north-east side. Today, the remaining buildings serve as shelter for cattle. But the pride of the Haddington Home Guard was undoubtedly two 18-pounder field guns stored on the site of the present Newtonport surgery. Andrew Ross of East Linton Home Guard recounts his experiences to David Hare with particular reference to the spigot mortar at Pencrake.
Right, now it was never actually used in anger because of course the country wasn't invaded. Were you up here training often or not?
Once, twice at the most. Twice at the most. We only fired one lot of live ammunition on the mortar range in the hills. That was the only mortars we fired live. They fired 2 or 3 dummies. But
and I believe this is not the only spigot site that you know of at any rate.
No, there's another one on grounds in a house called in East Linton at the crossroads, and they're doing it at the Preen crossroads.
Okay, well let's think a bit about yourself, because you joined the East Linton Home Guard as a fairly young, fairly tender age, 16 and a half, didn't you?
Yes, that's right. I was asked if I was volunteering, and well, you just said yes. And I thoroughly enjoyed it, even at that. But I wasn't on what you would call active service until I was 17. I had no rifle, no ammo, no nothing like this until I was 17. But I was staying in and just to give messages and this sort of thing, and was on parade and schemes, for I wasn't an active member of the company. Aye.
But you joined, well, you were on active service from 17 years old, and that was in 1940, you said, I think?
41. 41. I was 17 and 41.
And you served right till 45?
Right until they were disbanded, aye.
How many other men would have been in the unit with you?
Oh, there were about 100 in the company, around about 100 in the company. But it was very well manned, this Slinton, because you had a special platoon there that was supposed to work behind the lines if there were an invasion, and you also had the railway. The railway had their own platoon, and they looked after the railway line and this station and whatnot. We had nothing to do with that.
Now our picture would obviously be fairly strongly influenced by Dad's army and the television. I presume you had much the same kind of experience in terms of lectures and manoeuvres and so on, did you?
Oh, okay, in the same... I was going to say something there. Sorry,
it's okay, it's far ahead.
I blew it there. We have the same cock-ups as they have, you know, and it's... I don't know, we were doing manoeuvres or something, and somebody done something wrong, you know. One time they were a block and they gave a rifle, and I wouldn't have asked them to hit a barn door because they couldn't. And no, one of us assisted the other, what are you doing with him sitting there? He says, well, I'll tell him to fire 5 live rounds if you'll crawl on the hedge, which of course he wouldn't do because the one would have got you, you know. We were laughs for all the...
I believe on one occasion you had to, attack, I suppose, is the word, East Fortune Airport, airfield?
Yeah, aye. We were doing there, supposed to be in the RAF regiment practice for defence, and I was called everything bar because I got in the back way because I knew our way in that the Air Force used as a shortcut, and I led the company in there. I led my school and my section in there and got in behind them, which caused disruption.
Wasn't in the rules of the game?
It wasn't in the rules of the game. I just said, well, what's in the rules of war? But they took it a good part, you know. But my own sergeant asked what the hell I was doing, you know. I mean, that was one of the sort of things that we got up to. I mean, just...
Well, obviously, though, there was a very serious side to the whole business. You would have been out. What kind of jobs did you do in the evenings and the weekends when you were on duty?
Well, we went away and we had schemes against the different sections. One section would be sent out early and to go somewhere we didn't. We had just had a vague idea and we were to go out and try and catch them and pretend they were the enemy and this sort of thing, and threw chalk grenades at them. And whatnot, and of course it was taken very seriously because you had to take it seriously when you were the last line of defence. There were a bit of a lot of jocular and all, but when it came to serious stuff, well, it was taken seriously, very seriously.
Right. I believe too, just to round off, that you had one somewhat electric experience when you were out on manoeuvres one night?
That was a laugh. I was leading a squad, being a scout I was leading a squad, and we were along beside an electric fence. It's an electric sheep fence. And it was a dark night and everybody was holding onto the bayonet in front, bayonet sheath in front of you, each other, and for a laugh I thought I would grab the electric wire, which put the electric power on the last man. Of course when he shouted and let go, the one in front of him got it, and they were just all shouting something. Of course, that was another swing.
You were popular again.
They're popular again.
Well, many thanks indeed, Ed, for sharing your experiences with us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Some of the less conventional weapons which were developed, evidence of which can still be found in the countryside if you know where to look, included the flamme fugace, from the French for a small mine. Typically it consisted of a 50-gallon metal drum filled with a mixture of petrol, oil and rubber, and fitted with an explosive charge. Cleverly sited, usually in a bend in the road, the fugace would be hidden in a bank, hedgerow or copse of trees, ready to be exploded by remote control on the approach of the enemy. Their main targets were German tanks or items of transport. The best preserves can still be found in a wood on the Dansken Carfrae Road. This had a concrete tank. Here are interior shots. and the present-day location. Another one still to be seen was located on Danskin Brae. This drawing illustrates the wartime layout of Longnidree Station, where one of these deadly gadgets was sighted, hidden on a wooden platform high up in the trees. From a tank container on the platform, a pipe ran down vertically to another, which ran along a boundary wall. The pipe had a line of small holes along its full length. By opening a valve, concealed in the trees, petrol could escape under a considerable pressure. A huge spray of petrol was created, capable of reaching the other side of the road, which, as you can see from this aerial photo, is some considerable distance. Once lit, the effect would have been entirely devastating. Unfortunately, when it was tested, the railway fence was also set ablaze. Although the road layout has changed, the scene is still recognisable today. A similar device was set up at Loughness House, with defence trenches on the seaward side. Another was at the foot of the Hugh Brae in North Berwick. You can still find the site today. A flamme fugace was set up at the entrance to Dunbar Harbour. Again, when tested, disaster was narrowly averted, as a sheet of flame covered almost the whole harbour, and fishing boats had to be moved hurriedly to the inner harbour. Flamme fugace equipment was also located at the places shown. Another flamme fugace was set up in the granary wynd at Aberlady, with a pipe stretching for nearly a quarter of a mile along the Gullen Road. A new type of weapon was the hedge hopper. It consisted of barrels of oil with explosives attached. One was set up at Torbrig on the Old Hamstocks Road, to be detonated from a hidden position behind a hedge and directed towards the oncoming vehicles. The ravine at Dunglass was protected by a small garrison, whose objective was to repel any possible German raiding party. The sandbags still remain, as this picture of George Gray, who was in the local Home Guard, shows. George Angus talks to George Davidson, Charlie Spence and Alan Coburn about their experiences.
That was down at Jeanfield. It was in a wood that ran at right angles to the wood on the roadside. It ran out into the field, and the OB was in the middle of that. But the wood's cut down now, and the field's ploughed up, and the OB was blasted. The army came along about 30 years afterwards, after the war, came along. The thing, it fell in, and they discovered it.
Yes.
Nobody had told them anything about it, and there was about at least 100 pounds of high explosive in it, and the army was at fault at not attending to this. Mm-hmm. However, no damage was done. The army came eventually and put a charge in and blew the place up, and all the trains were stopped.
Yes.
Very big, very important day.
I really don't remember. We all knew each other so well that we just got in touch with each other immediately. And gathered at our operations base. Yes, indeed. We had a lot of heart searching about it, because we were told that if we had the opportunity, we'd to shoot the person that had been caught.
So that he couldn't give information to the enemy?
Yes, and it probably would have been much kinder to shoot him than to leave him in German hands.
Well, as I say, the whole point in that and the secrecy is that no member of the public must know where we were. Otherwise, we were done for.
Yes.
Because Germans would have a way of getting the public to speak.
That's true.
No bother at all. Just pop one or two of them off, and somebody will talk. So anyway, as I said, we were congratulated as being the only one on the lot that had never been discovered.
Yes. Yes.
But it was really only once I went for training.
For training, yes.
I was supposed to be trained after that, and I took the platoon down, and we were the leading platoon in the district. So we had the honour of representing it was Scotland we were representing at the finish, and we got third, which was very good, I think.
Yes, yes.
Because Kent was first, Sussex second, and East Lynn was third. Yes. When D-Day was approaching and we were all expecting something, the word came round and they asked for volunteers to go to a special mission. Again, all secret, very secret. And went down in the train, and we were sitting in a restaurant. I remember we were sitting in a restaurant in the station at King's Cross, and the radio was on, and the news came through that the long-awaited Anglo-American invasion of Europe had taken place on the coast of Normandy that morning. That was the first we heard about it. Mm-hmm. And then we were told we were going overseas. That frightened us a wee bit. And then we discovered we were going over the Isle of Wight. And we had quite a good holiday there for a fortnight. And we were patrolling at night along the downs.
Yes.
There was a German parachute unit over in the Calais, Calais region, and they didn't know what was going to happen to it, so that's what we were supposed to be defending or watching for or looking for.
Yes.
And I suppose we did a good job but it was a very short period, because the war moved on up the coast.
Yes.
And no, there was really nothing happened. I had the experience of going into a cinema and having a rifle between my knees with 5 rounds of ammunition in my pocket, just in case anything happened.
Yes, yes.
Well, I was in the Home Guard at Stenton, and they asked for some volunteers. Of course, they couldn't say what it was for,
no.
But I felt that when I was exempt as a farm worker from going into the army proper, that I would volunteer
to make up for it,
yes. To do something more for the country.
Yes.
And that was how I got involved.
So did you go on these training exercises?
Yes, well, it was down at Coles Hill and through it at Monksford, it's in Boswells.
Did you get to Balmoral?
No, I did not, because I couldn't tell the Mr. Thompson, who was the farmer, where I was wanting to go, having to keep it secret. So I said, if you can go some other time when we're not so busy. So that was it.
Very high explosives, nitroglycerine and sticky bombs that you could throw against something, and the side caved in and it stuck to the vehicle or tank or whatever. And we also had other explosives that we had to tape to railway lines or telephone poles or electricity pylons or anything like that to disrupt communications, or of course to get into East Fortune aerodrome, which was to be our main target, and put explosives on aeroplanes if the Germans had planes.
They would have been German aircraft,
Oh,
yes.
yes.
You also, I believe, had equipment which even the regular army didn't have.
Yes, with one very fine machine gun that we were issued with right at the beginning when they were fairly certain there was going to be a landing. But the one thing I parted with a great regret at the end of the war was my Smith & Wesson revolver. It was extremely accurate. And George here also had a Smith & Wesson revolver that he was very accurate with.
Good.
It was a hopeless night, bright moonlight, as bright as moonlight is possible to be. And we were all caught, but I was fortunate, I was very fortunate. I happened to be in a ditch, and I looked along the ditch and I saw the patrol coming along towards me. As they passed over, I clapped into the side of the ditch. As they passed over the top of me, the leader said, if they get over the railway, they're in. So I proceeded to crawl through the field on hands and knees and up the railway. There was a train came from East Fortune, from the Edinburgh side, and passed over me. And just immediately after that, I wanted to come the other way. So I had a very fortunate chance to snip over the railway. And after that, I discovered there was no sentries, and I just proceeded to toddle through the field at Crocky, a ploughed field. Fortunately, it's very nice sandy ground down there, and I made the boundary of the aerodrome when the all clear sign was given. So I didn't really, technically, I didn't get in, but I reached the boundary, and well, they knew all about it anyway.
Alone among all of the European countries engaged in the war, Britain already had an underground resistance force in place, whose aim was to harass and destroy enemy supply links and communications. This force was given a name which was deliberately vague, so as to arouse no suspicions. The title Auxiliary Unit was coined, a name which had already been used in the army, but which bore little or no association to any existing military activity. Clearly, the auxiliary units were also expected to carry out an intelligence gathering role, passing on details of German formations and their locations to Auxiliary Unit HQ. Such messages would have been sent by the Signals Group, based in Smeaton Wood, and comprising Alec Niven, James Grieve, schoolmaster in East Linton, and the remarkable Reverend Souter, minister at Whitekirk, who acted as runner and who is still posted missing. Another group who were recruited from overseas were the Newfoundlanders. They worked hard during the day felling trees, but nevertheless felt it was their duty to join the Home Guard, training at weekends and in the evening. A small group were based at Elmscleuch. Now let us join Drew Scott and Lou Jenkins talking about Lou's time in East Lothian Home Guard.
You weren't
We
Canadians.
were born as British oldest colony.
Is that true?
You see?
Yes.
So
yes.
when they called for volunteers for the forestry, that's why we volunteered. And of course, once we got there was only 300 came over in the
Yes.
first draft.
And this would be just at the beginning of the war?
1939, the 18th of December.
Right, right. And did you remain civilians,
We
more or less?
remained civilians.
During
because-
the war?
During the war, yes.
That's
Because the
interesting.
Home Guard was a different system
Yes,
altogether.
Of course it
Yeah.
was. And what basically was the kind of work that you were involved in?
Well,
what sort of contribution were you making then to the war effort?
Well,
when
we
you
were
came up?
cutting timber to keep the mines going. You see, they need chalks, they need all those things in the mines to keep the roofs up and everything in those days.
Yes,
You
yes,
see?
yes.
So after we finished in Kildare, we went to Plashetts, and we left Plashetts and went to Castle Lower. You
Right.
see, cut out the bit of wood there,
Yes.
and then we landed up in Elmscleuch.
Elmscleuch,
Yes,
well, that's a
up
familiar
other
name
side
to,
of Dunbar.
to East Lothian folk.
Yeah.
And was there a lot of timber there at this time?
There was a lot of timber, yes.
Yes.
We were about 5 months up there.
So I believe that there was a bit of an incident with a German aircraft, something to do with searchlights.
Oh,
I
that
believe.
was up at a place called Woodall.
Right.
That was just across from where we were stationed at Ennerwick,
Yes.
Elmscleuch rather, and they dropped the bombs. We had to go on duty, and once you got them in the searchlight, you had to keep them there. So they dropped their bombs, but I come down in the glen. You know,
Right,
what they
right.
call the glen.
Yes.
It's a big, deep gully.
Yes.
Well, there was two bombs dropped that night there.
Right. But I take it they didn't hit the searchlight.
Oh, no, they didn't hurt in the searchlight.
Yeah.
But you had to keep them in the searchlight for the
course.
gunners.
Yes. And what part of your wartime experience did that happen in? Was that early on?
That was when we were in the Home Guard.
Oh, that was to do with the Home Guard.
Doing with the Home Guard. that
Right,
was.
I see.
Yeah.
And of course you had a double job, as it were. You wore two hats. You had your lumber interests, and you had also your
Yes.
Home Guard interests.
Yeah.
How did that come about, the Home Guard side of things?
Well, they asked us to volunteer because when the boys was getting mauled and that, they turned around and wanted somebody to, like of Bellhaven here, it was all open, they could come in or anything, you know.
Yes.
So we joined the local Home Guard, but we were a Home Guard on our own. We had the Newfoundland flesh on our shoulder,
Yes.
but we wasn't allowed to wear the uniform outside of being on guard. We couldn't go outside with it on because we wouldn't need the services, as far as the British was concerned. You wasn't allowed to wear the uniform because we come over as civilians, but we could go on guard and all these things with the uniform, you see.
And you did take part in exercises.
Oh
though,
yes, we used
as
to come down to Etterwick there and take part, and we had a crowd coming from North Berwick,
Yes.
and we had to go and try it down at Tone Castle. What do you call it? Tone Castle. Tantallon Castle. And we had to capture them, or they had to capture us. See what I mean?
Yeah.
That was the kind of thing that we were doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
And was that
every weekend? That was
every weekend.
Every weekend you had to go on duty.
You had a bit of a problem with when you were loading the wagons with timber.
Oh yes. That was at the station, of course. That's when the plane come over and machine gunned. You see, we were loading the wood in those iron wagons.
Yes.
And of course, when the bullets was hitting, you hear them ping, ping, ping. Of course, we had to dive into a empty one.
Goodness me, yes, yes. And somebody got hurt.
Oh, well, a man got killed. He got his
Yes.
head blown off.
That was quite nasty.
A passing German bomber strafed railway workers at Innerwick Station. Tragically, one of them was killed. He was one of the specially established Railway Home Guard section. In June 1942, the Home Guard also took over the manning of an armoured train. K-Train was in the hands of the 10th City of Edinburgh Battalion and plied its way up and down the East Coast main line between Edinburgh and the border with England, so providing an extra arm of defence to East Lothian. The train was armed with a 6-pounder and 6 Bren guns and was stabled overnight at Longnidrey. Some Home Guard units were great equalisers. In Cleggarney Home Guard, it was the bothy man who had served in World War I who was the sergeant. Ironically, in 1944, the Germans did destroy Cleggarney Air Raid Shelter, but it was pulled down by German prisoners of war under supervision. And later that year, the threat of invasion having receded considerably, the Home Guard was stood down. A final Home Guard exercise was carried out on the West Beach at North Berwick, and a final inspection made before the final parade. In the event the German army never invaded Britain, the Home Guard in East Lothian, as elsewhere, were never put to the ultimate test. But the fighting farmers were ready to fight on the beaches, on the landing grounds, in the hills. Let there be no doubt, they were ready.